Welcome to the We Are All Dying podcast. My name is Jenna Goodhand, and my hope is that through these conversations, we become more comfortable, competent, and confident talking about death. On today's show, we talk with Jennifer O'Brien from Little Rock, Arkansas, about how to deal with grief during major days. Jennifer has, for over 35 years, been a consultant to physicians and served in several intern CEO and other leadership positions. The art journal she created during her late husband's 22-month illness was published as The Hospice Doctor's Widow and won 4 awards, including a Nautilus. Now, Jen shares her story, wisdom, and experience to help people recognize that death preparation is love, family caregiving is both the hardest job and the greatest honor, and love is greater than death. Well, welcome to the show, Jen. I'm so grateful to have you with us today.
Likewise. Glad.
Um, there's a very specific topic I want to talk about today, but I do like to, dig into you as a person, and your experience with death and loss and grief. And I wonder if you have a moment in your life where grief showed itself at an earlier point in your life where you realized, wow, we're not going to live forever. We do die. Is there something that comes to mind as one of your earlier moments that's really stuck with you?
Yeah, I mean, my brother died, my only sibling, David, when I was 18 and he was 13. And that's pretty young to lose your sibling. So yeah, it was a motor vehicle accident. He didn't die right away. He was in a coma for 3 weeks, and then there just wasn't any brain activity on the imaging, and so my parents decided to extubate, and he died 3 weeks after the accident. So
Wow.
um, so that was really it. That was 41 years ago, and it very much shaped me in so many ways, and my family. Families don't recover from that very easily, and I'm not sure mine ever did. My I think when sibling survivor sibling, especially a sole survivor sibling, although I don't have any data on any other situations, I only have my experience, but I think it's a especially painful loss. I mean, not to compare, but when you lose your sibling at a young age, especially, you lose your parents too, because your parents, simply cannot cope with the fact that they've outlived their child, which is totally understandable. But it's especially difficult for the remaining sibling or siblings because, they're just sort of lost at that point. And I'm sure some families do a better job of recovering, and some families probably have done a worse job. So it's, like I said, not great to compare, but ours had a hard time, really hard time. I had one of the things, again, as a survivor sibling, is you have a lot of, in addition to losing your parents, kind of as parents, there's a lot of responsibility. At least I felt this way. There's the responsibility to stay alive until both your parents die, because having them outlive a second child would be just beyond devastation. And then in my case, they both had a lot of trouble in their lives afterward, probably because of his death. And I felt a responsibility, to care for them. And I did until they died. So, yeah, so it's a sibling. And the crazy thing about sibling loss, is it's the most sort of overlooked griever. Invisible is a word that's used sometimes with regard to survivor siblings. If you lose your sibling as a kid in the kid years, and when you tell somebody, as I did, when you tell people, because people ask, right, in conversation as they're getting to know you, do you have any brothers and sisters? And I never really felt comfortable saying no, because
Right.
I wasn't an only child, and an only child, that's a whole different scenario. But if I say I don't have any brothers and sisters, then that makes you think I'm an only child, which is just not authentic. So I felt There was only once in my life on an airplane that I decided I didn't want to go into it, and I said no, and I regretted it. It felt disloyal to David, and so I never, other than that one time, I never did that again. I'd always say I had one brother, but he died when I was 18 and he was 13, is what I typically say. And I will tell you that 99 times out of 100, the response will be to me, who has just shared this information, the response will be, oh, that must have been horrible for your parents.
Mm,
And it
yes.
was. It was horrible for my parents, and it was horrible for me. And
Yeah.
I'm the one you're talking to, so, read the room, man. Like, but they don't. And then I understand this from reading some other stuff about sibling loss from other people who lost their siblings more in the adult range, that the other big stupid question that people ask when you tell them that when people tell them they lost a sibling as an adult is they will say, "Were you close?"
Oh,
As if that matters, right? Like that doesn't
yeah.
matter. I've just confessed to you that I lost my sibling.
Yeah.
Sibling died, and you're going to try to qualify the degree of loss that I'm experienced. That's crazy. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So David was my first real, close death, and it really shaped me for sure.
Wow, I want to thank you for putting so much words to that. Um, yeah, like that was a lot. And I think, I'm going back in my head to the moments where people throughout my life have told me that they lost a sibling. And my response and my bypass of their experience and thinking about their parents. And yeah, it's so interesting. I don't know why we do that, but I'm
Well,
so sorry.
I think we do it in I think we do it because I've tried to reconcile the idea recently, actually. I have wrestled and reconciled with how to have compassion when people say stupid stuff like that.
Right.
Um, because I want to be compassionate first, but there are some times when people say stuff that's just like, oh no, you did not just say that. That's like so hurtful and so
Yeah.
dumb, kind of thing. And it's happened a couple times recently, and I found myself going, well, why? I try very hard to go to compassion first in lots of aspects of my life. And why am I not able to go to compassion first
Mm.
in that aspect? And I think the reason people do it, it's a very quick, subconscious way that they can separate themselves, that they can say, well, first of all, with the parenting thing, that comes a lot from people who are parents. And what they're doing is imagining losing their own kid. That's,
Yes.
losing a 13-year-old basically is
Right.
what they heard. And I am not a parent, so I can't totally, I can empathize certainly, but I can't totally experience that. But I have been very close to younger people in my life, and the idea of outliving them is just appalling, and devastating to me. So I do kind of get that. And so I think that's what it is. There's a couple of things that I have reconciled myself to do to try to have compassion for stupid stuff that people say. And that is, one is that what they're really doing is a lot of times they're self-oriented. So they're
Yes.
basically trying to tell themselves reasons that this could not possibly happen to them, or reasons that this is not as big a deal as it really sounds like, were you close, and then the second way that I have reconciled to be compassionate is that I myself have had stupid reactions and said stupid stuff. And I mean, we all have, we just have. I'm convinced, I should say I have said stupid stuff in the past. I've done a lot of sort of self-reflection on that stuff and why I said those things. especially as I've gotten into this space since my first book was published, and I, sort of ended up deep in this space and learned about some of the things that are improper to say or unwittingly hurtful. And so, yeah, I think we've all done it. I certainly have done it. I've been hurt by it plenty, and now I'm having an idea of, oh wow, yeah, I've made that mistake.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I know in some of your work you talk about like grief literacy, and a lot of the, stupid responses or questions just come from a lack of practice and a lack
Yeah,
of knowing what do we say. So we say stupid things until we find ourselves in that moment where those things are being said to us and we realize, wow, that was really unkind and insensitive. You recently had a video talking about, Bob's death and people referring to him as your ex. Well, he's not your ex. He's your husband who died.
yeah,
So
my
even things like
late
that,
husband, right?
right?
Not my ex-husband. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, conversations and, I like to think that one of the reasons we're finding ourselves in these, moments is because we are sharing more of our feelings. We are more in touch with our feelings. And so as we do that, we're gonna have to figure it out together. How do we support each other in a kind and compassionate way as we internalize and reflect on our feelings? I'm really curious. So you documented your experience with Bob as he was dying. What prompted you to do that? Where in the experience did you say, I'm gonna start not just documenting, but like artistically documenting this experience? Where did that come from?
Very early on, I have been and was for years prior to Bob's illness, a self-taught collage artist. Um, Prior to Bob's illness, it was mostly analog. It was right at the time that he got sick, that I decided to teach myself digital collage, which is not easy. But it was actually ended up being sort of it was a good thing to have head and heart, right? Like my heart knew what I wanted on the page, and my head had to figure out how to make it look like that. But no, it was very quickly after the diagnosis, because journaling in general is to me is a form of self-care. Art journaling specifically is a big form of self-care for me. And so I started doing it right away. I also, Bob was just so good at what he did as far as being a palliative care and hospice physician. He had such wisdom, and a lot of what I initially was doing, was documenting that wisdom and the unique experience of having to then turn that on ourselves. It certainly wasn't done to become a book. Like it was just, I don't even think Bob knew I was doing it. I don't know. I can't be sure, but I don't think he ever knew I was doing it.
I love that. Well, it's
Yeah.
absolutely beautiful. And I hope to have you back to talk deeper about that. But there
Okay.
was one aspect of it where you talk about the major days in our lives and how to navigate that. How would you define major days in your own definition for those listening?
Ooh, great question. So the major days are any day that has significance in your grief. I think that's what it is. There are some that sort of classically fall into that category, typically, not for everyone, but for a lot of people, like the major holidays, that typically count as major days. But then there can be other days, the anniversary of the diagnosis, right? For a long time, that was a big day for me, was the day that, the day of that the night actually that we discovered he had a stage 4 metastatic cancer. Um, so those are the major days are the ones that have significance for the griever in their grief specifically.
And in your own experience, because you've had like significant losses, have you been surprised by major days that you didn't know were major?
Oh yeah. Yeah, more than once. And it's funny because the major days don't oftentimes they're annual, but sometimes they lie dormant for a while. For any one of a number of reasons. Something can come through, years out where
Mm.
suddenly Halloween is, oh, and it's might be because you kind of remembered something or just no rhyme or reason. It's just this year, the first year Halloween took the first year after Bob died, Halloween took me by surprise. Bob and I didn't have kids. We used to we lived in this lovely neighborhood, but we didn't get a lot of trick-or-treaters. The first year that I moved in with Bob into that house, I bought buku candy. And we got like two trick-or-treaters, and we ended up, the two of us, eating a ridiculous amount of candy over the next few weeks. And so the following year, we decided we would just turn all the lights off in the front of the house and go cuddle back in the bedroom, right? And just be not home on Halloween night because I just didn't want to eat however many bags of candy we were eating that year. So that was our little Halloween tradition. And I didn't think about it in that first year, in that first Halloween after Bob died in January. And so the first Halloween, I approached it without thinking it was going to be an issue. And that night, I was
Mm,
just such a grief bomb, such an
yeah.
unexpected grief bomb that I was like, oh, wait a minute. No, 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 no. We didn't have kids. We didn't hand out candy, but we did this special thing for us. And so, yes, that one took me completely by surprise. I've also had years where, the Christmas season, say, is particularly difficult. That's happening this year. And then years where I sailed through it, fairly unscathed. So, major days are unique, I think, to the griever, can be unique to the griever. But because there are certain that are typically fall into everyone's major day category or most people's, there are some that are pretty obvious. And that they're not necessarily consistent from year to year as to just how major they are.
Right. So you used a phrase that I've heard before. So anticipatory grief. When I've heard about it before, it's mostly, when there's been a diagnosis or a death is coming, and you actually used it in relation to these major days. Is there a different sort of, group of feelings or way that anticipatory grief happens after the person has died versus knowing they're going to die? Was that different for you or feels the
Yeah, I suppose you can have anticipatory feelings of any sort, can happen as you approach in time an event, a date, a responsibility, something you have to do. So yes, I don't know, I didn't realize that I used the term anticipatory grief per se, but there is an anticipatory aspect to approaching the major days that in my experience I have found at times to be worse than the day itself. Like I
Mm,
can conjure up how awful this is going to be,
right.
and then the day comes and I'm still here and I'm not, I get through it. Um, yeah, I have on my website, I have a free download for anyone who's listening. You're welcome to go to jenniferaobrien.com and download from the resources page a griever's guide to anticipatory, I mean, sorry, a griever's guide to the major days. And yeah, that one of the things I discuss in that is that approaching it is often tougher than the actual day. Um,
Mhm.
and
And
that the
I do hope people download it because I don't want to give it all away. But there is a rule that you kind of open the document with. And I was wondering if you could share sort of why that rule is the one rule and where that kind of came from for you.
Yeah, sure. The rule is, or two, yeah, the rules are that you don't do harm to yourself and you don't do harm to others. That's it. That's all there, that's the only rules there are. None of the rest of it matters, whether you put up your Christmas tree or you don't put up your Christmas tree, whether you eat an entire birthday cake yourself or you can't stomach anything, none of that matters. All that really matters is that you do not harm yourself and you do not harm others. That's the only rule. Everything else is totally what works for you for a griever. And I think that's important for us as grievers to be reminded of. I think that's really important for anyone trying to support a griever to understand because there's a lot of folks who haven't been through it or folks who have been through it because the truth is one grief story is just that. It's one grief story. My grief story with David is really quite different than my grief story with my mom. So just because I have been through it several times with all of my family members and my husband does does it makes me grief experienced. It does not make me grief expert, you
Mhm.
know.
Like that.
And so I think anytime you're not the actual griever, whether you've been through it yourself or not, remembering all that's really important in getting my friend or my sister or whoever it is through this holiday season or this major day or whatever it is that she doesn't harm herself or others. That's the major thing. And I might have all kinds of ideas about what's going to help her, but the truth is those are the only two that are non-negotiable.
Amazing. So you really do emphasize like everyone's story of grief is very different. Um, is there some surprising ways that people have used your grief support that you didn't expect or that have really touched you, beyond maybe what you expected that they might use this for?
Honestly, I don't have a lot of feedback on that. So if if y'all download the thing and find it useful or do something unique with it, by all means, drop me an email and let me know. I don't know that I've heard anything. There's a lot of ideas in that document about kind of what options are, as far as handling the major days. The one thing I talk about a lot, and I find this to be just, sort of constant, is this notion, this fact that the day is 24 hours long.
Mm,
Major days are 24 hours long, just like every other day of the year. And the time goes by, right? That is one thing we can count on. Time keeps going. And so when you wake up at 6 a.m. on a major day, you need to congratulate yourself because you just got through 6 of the 24 hours without even, right? With
great.
just by sleeping. So that and what I typically recommend doing is creating a little sort of scheduled set of treats for yourself that will get you through that 24-hour day and then congratulating yourself at the end of it, whether it's that night or the next morning, like you did it, you got through it. And so yeah, I haven't heard anything. I would love to hear from people about anything creative they've done with that document.
I wonder if just like, we don't always know what to say. Sometimes we also don't want to bring up death, grief in conversation. Maybe people have just been keeping it to themselves because there's this strange thing, and I know that you can probably relate to this, where it's like we don't want to remind people that their people died, but we're already
As
thinking
if
about
we've
it.
forgotten.
Yeah, but it's like, so I think sometimes even when we have the experience grief and it can be relatable, we still really keep it to ourselves. Do you hope that we stop doing that? Do you hope that we become, a more grief literate group of people.
Oh, yeah, we
Yeah.
have to. We just have no choice. I really think a huge, I have no data to support this really, but my gut says that just the underlying root cause of so much of the problems we're experiencing in society these days, both on a macro and a micro level, are the root cause is fundamentally grief, that unresolved or complex or just plain old grief. Um, and it has, ballooned into something else that makes people behave badly toward each other or not be able to cope or whatever. Lots of stuff, I think, has its root cause in grief. And it's so amazing to me too that I talk in some writing and works that I do about what I call the triad of certainty. The triad of certainty is at the end of life comes death. There are no do-overs in end of life, and changed forever, the
Mm.
surviving loved ones remain and remember. This is universal, right?
Right.
No group of people, no ethnicity, no race gets out of this triad of certainty. And
Hmm.
yet, we're illiterate when it comes to that entire triad. Most people have not done end of life preparation, had conversations, and most people approach their death completely unprepared. And even if they've been sick for a long time. And then, of course, the fact that there are remaining loved ones who are grieving, we do a terrible job with that in general.
Hmm.
And I don't think it's unique to the United States. What little conversation I've had with folks in other countries, um, uh, they describe similar stuff.
Hmm. Because you are comfortable talking about death and you think about it, it's your work. Is there still an aspect for you that you find challenging looking at your own end of life that you're working through, if you're comfortable
Oh,
sharing?
definitely, definitely. Yeah, I am the last one standing. My brother, mother, husband, and father have all died now, and I have no kids. I am what is called a solo ager in the US. We are referred to as kinless in Canada. Um, and I have I kind of vacillate on my own death. On the one hand, I feel ready. Um, I firmly believe I'll be reunited with the people I love who have died, and there have been, so many of them that I feel ready to be reunited with them. On the other hand, I think about, wow, it'll be over, right? Like, it'll just, I don't know. I go a little bit back and forth. Am I totally ready? I mean, I don't know 100%. I feel ready, but I'm not exiting tomorrow by my own decision or anything like that. Just, if it happens and kind of when it happens and who will be left. Uh there are just based on kind of my general health and well-being right now, it looks like I'm going to live well past the life expectancy for a female in the US. And I'm very mixed about that. I'm not struggling as much with my own death as I am struggling with continuing to outlive people I love.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Well, one of the ways that you're gonna outlive yourself is in your work. And so I wonder, like, you've now written your second book. Is writing and sharing this work something you think of as a legacy? Is it prompted by something else? What sort of moves you to take something so private and offer it to the rest of us?
Yeah, there's only one thing that helps me to share such personal loss and trials with the world, and that is the notion that it will help others because it is hard. It is hard beyond what I imagined. I don't, so the story of the hospice doctor's widow, the first book is that it was this art journal that I kept while Bob was dying, and then I don't know, a couple of years after he died, I was working in a practice, and this neurologist that I was working with told me he was diagnosing 3 different patients with ALS. I brought the journal into him. He read the journal. He's like, "Yeah, you're not getting your journal back. I will be loaning it to these 3 patients and their spouses, and you need to figure out how to get that thing published." And that was just so compelling. And he said, "You need to figure out how to get that thing published because it could help a lot of people." That's
Amazing.
what he said. And I was just like, "All right, where do I sign? Like, how do I get this done?" That was just so compelling. And that drove me for the time and the effort that it took to find a publisher and to get it out into the world. When it went out into the world, that's when I realized just what I had done in terms of opening myself up to the whole thing. And I'm not going to lie, it is very hard. And it's especially hard at times like this. I'm having a tough time with this holiday season. And yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
No
Um,
question.
yeah, the other thing I noticed is you sharing about how love is greater than death. And I wonder if you
Have
could.
it on my t-shirt.
Oh, you do. Can you unpack where that came from and what you really want us to take away from that? Because I love it and I don't even know what you entirely mean by it.
Well, so how did I come to that? Oh, that's a great question. So the Hospice Doctor's Widow has been reissued as a second edition, and this is the art on the new last page of the Hospice Doctor's Widow. It was, it's a lot of um, thinking and feeling and then writing and then creating symbol and just sorting through. So, and I did do a little video at one point because, okay, so let me just figure this out. So it was about how there seems to be, especially among the grief illiterate, and I mean, and I should say the grief inexperienced,
Mm,
the loss inexperienced folks, there seems to be this notion, yeah, I guess notion that we who have lost someone are somehow supposed to move on or forget them or stop loving them. Especially as a widow or a widower, you get that a lot. Have you started dating? Like,
mm,
um, and I find myself kind of in this sort of an ongoing, argument with those folks. You didn't stop loving your husband, who's still alive. Why would I stop loving mine because he died?
right.
And that's really where the love is greater than death.
Yes.
Death is greater than a lot of things, right? Death is greater than a healthy lifestyle. Death is greater than a cure. Death is greater than remission. Death is greater than the best doctors. Death is greater than the clinical trial that you've been trying to get into, right? Like death is greater than all those things. Love is greater than death. The love goes on. The people who are still here, still love the ones who have died. And so the love is greater than the death. Yeah, that's how I came to that.
I love that. What a great way to end this conversation. I'm going to put all the links to your books and your Instagram and all the things. Thank you so much, Jen, for taking the time. I know you've got a very busy schedule, and really opening up about this, especially as it relates to the major days. I'm going to try and get this out, but the reality is, as we know, major days can be any day. So
Major days, that's
anytime.
right. That's right.
Anytime. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
coming.
Yes.
And thank you. I look forward to the continued work that you do, and thank you so much for helping us be more literate as it relates to death.
My pleasure.
Awesome. I want to thank you for tuning in to another episode of We Are All Dying. My hope is that through the conversation you listened to today, you find questions, thoughts, reflections, or opportunities to have conversations in your own life. If there's a topic or a guest that you'd like to see on the show, please reach out and let me know.